Oh, yes, the time has come for another week of the Night Pod Cometh. That's right. This is the podcast for the new season, season 15 of Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I am Jamie G. He is Magnum Mills. We are of the Joe Blow Football Show, and we're here to talk about season 15, episode 7. Mills, this one was called Dee Sinks in a Bog. It originally aired December 22nd, 2021, and we talked about this typically anytime throughout all 15 seasons of Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Anytime Dee does something in the title, it's usually a pretty killer episode. This one was directed by Pete Chapman. This was his 6th episode of Sunny that he's directed overall and 2nd of season 15 after The Gang makes Lethal Weapon 7. This was written by David Hornsby and Rob Roswell. Again, very common criminals here on the show. From a writing standpoint, it was co-starring Tom Archdeacon as Dr. O'Shaughnessy. It was guest starring Mary Elizabeth Ellis as the waitress and Mark Pendergrass as Gus, and special guest starring Cole Meany as Shelley Kelly. Plot summary in this one was guided by a young priest. Max spends a day at the seminary to truly understand what it takes to become a priest. Dennis and Frank plan an elaborate trap at the castle to humiliate Charlie's pen pal, and Dee prepares for a date with an Irish doctor. Mills, walk us through some of the notable callbacks and appearances in episode 7.
Yeah, and right here, it's going to be a thing that's kind of common with the Irish storyline here is we open to a prominent opening with stew being used to wake somebody else up. And in this case, instead of Dee receiving the stew, I should say, she is giving the stew. And then, when Dennis comes back out of it, he references Dee's neck skin, and we've heard him really refer to how much he loves the skin before, especially with the psychiatrist when the gang gets analyzed, as Dee confronts Dennis and says he just wanted to keep the skins. So we have that going for us, which is maybe not so nice. And then we have Frank, who refers to himself as Frankenstein, which is a callback to season 11's Being Frank. The glory hole is referenced here in context with the murder hole, as seen in Mac and Charlie Die Part 1, where Dennis gets a little freaky, and in Charlie's work in season 10, where we see him cover up, I believe, a nice little cat joinski. The waitress is again here, and she challenges one of the gang to just say what her name is. And of course, once again, the gang fails because nobody actually knows what the waitress's real name is. And once again, Frank thinks his poop is more useful and entertaining than anybody else in the gang. And again, finally, the waitress is once again way off the wagon as she is drunk for the majority of the episode.
I'm just going to let the cat out of the bag here a little bit. I fucking love this episode. This was really good for me, and it started right from the very second it opened. The stew opening, we've noticed this has been a theme throughout this season with the stew opening, and they keep it going. And it is so funny because this time it's Dennis waking up in the hospital, sniffing the stew, and then out of nowhere, as you start to get an idea and the camera starts to expand out and you see what's really happening, Dee just throws it right in his face. And it's so fucking funny because it's literally steaming hot. You can see the steam coming off of it. And it's just absolutely hysterical. The doctor comes in. It looks like he's either vomited or something terrible's happened. I mean, just a great opening here to really set the tone for what, to me, was an outstanding episode.
I enjoyed that. I would say as it kicks off, one of the first things that comes up once we get out of the hospital here, Dee kind of does her little like spider and a fly thing, which she traps the doctor. We've kind of seen her do that before. Not a lot of surprise there. But then they get back to the castle or whatever, and Dee kind of like kicks him out here. And I'll come back and reference that later in a different context. But then it leaves Frank and Dennis together. And they kind of look at each other and like,
yeah, just me and you, huh? Yeah. It's a little odd being one-on-one, though, I feel like we usually have a buffer. Yeah.
It's like it kind of is true. There aren't a lot of just Frank and Dennis storylines. The most prominent one I can think of is when they squeeze Charlie out when they pretend to be cops and whatnot. And the bums are making a mess all over the city, which is super awesome. So I'm there for the Frank Dennis storyline, but it is not like a team up that you see all the time, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, no, and it was a slow build up there, but it really worked. I mean, I don't know. Can we get more of Dennis just awkwardly, slowly kissing Frank's forehead, his bald head? I mean, not even his forehead, the top of his bald head. I mean, that was a very, very funny, weird moment for me that I absolutely loved. And I thought it was cool. One thing that worked was, and it worked, but it didn't, was speaking of Frank and Dennis, is this, they're really starting to ramp up Dennis's, potential to be, not potential, like Dennis basically confirming that he's this strange serial killing murderer who has a significant dark side.
The sickness and anger inside of you is diabolical. Way to go, son.
Well, I suppose all of your years of neglect and misdeeds have allowed me to harness the darkness inside me and to unleash it without conscience. So, yeah, perhaps I owe you a thanks for making me the man I am today, Frank. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we all kind of knew it, and they've teased it, and they flashed the tip, and we saw some neck, and we're seeing full on vein, full on dong here with Dennis in terms of how he likes to kind of have this like dark, creepy, murdering type obsession, right, Mills? I mean, it's been ramped up. Like,
there's a lot going on right there, both metatextual and like right on the fucking surface. Like,
yeah, it's a cool development. And again, we talked about this earlier in the season with seeing how far they would push this. They definitely pushed it all the way through, I think, this entire season. And obviously you mentioned earlier the glory hole reference. I thought this was just a funny moment where Dennis points out his diabolical plan for Dee's date.
Yeah, so you'll lure him under the hole where I will douse him with boiling oil or hot tar or really any scalding substance.
Wait, you're gonna char the guy?
Yeah.
Char him up?
Yeah, I'm not gonna kill him or anything, but
No.
it's gotta be hot enough to be annoying as shit, right?
Yeah,
You know what I
burn
mean?
him.
He's gonna get burned.
And it's not even like nobody's like raising a stink about they're going to dump boiling hot oil or fluids on this guy's head, but the murder hole, right? And Frank's first response is that like a glory hole? And it's like, yes, I suppose it's the predecessor to the glory hole. I mean, really funny exchange here, and I thought that was a cool way to just kind of lighten what was basically an extremely dark moment with Dennis in this castle, right? I mean, he's talking to the fucking walls. I mean, he's really full-blown crazy guy in this castle, and they did a great job at bringing a sense of humor to that, and also a lightness to just how dark that really was. That was just outstanding.
And I think they did a good job by kind of cutting back to the Mac storyline there, where again, we'll come back to that maybe in some of the stuff I didn't like, but I would say what really worked there is when they're like in the pews or whatever in the church, supposed to be quiet, and the dude says something, and Max says, "That's what he said."
That's gonna be really hard for me. That's what he said. That's really kind. I'm sorry, it just slipped out. That's what he said.
So I will say that is maybe one of the best "that's what he said" I've ever heard.
It's got to be top 3. I mean, I don't
know another off the top of my head, but those were very good too.
I'm willing to like cement it in stone as top 3. That's what he said, but it's competing for number 1. Another thing that worked with Mac for me was, I just thought it was so funny when they're starting to bring in the storyline with him, really trying to find out his day in the seminary here, where he's trying to find out what it's like to be an actual priest, and he's giving his opinion on biblical references. And he's explaining to the priest that's kind of shadowing him, and he basically confuses Noah's Ark with Indiana Jones' Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it was an absolute hilarious moment. It was so well done.
Then God made the Ark of the Covenant, where he promised to never, ever do it again. Then a bunch of people looked at it. He didn't like that, so he blasted them too. Remember the Nazis got their faces all melted off, and the guy with the whip and the hat, he was cool.
I think you've mixed that story up with Indiana Jones.
Oh. I did?
Yeah.
And just outstanding, supporting acting work here by the priest that played Gus. As he starts to slowly like figure out, like, I think you're confusing that with Indiana Jones, and he realized that it's Raiders of the Lost Ark. Just really well done. We've seen Mac do that a little bit in the past, and it's not old. It works, and it hit here for me, man. I thought those were two of the best moments of Mac's storyline. Mills, anything jump out to you about Dee's storyline here that you liked?
I think the again, something we'll talk about in the things that we liked and the things that we didn't is how Dee's storyline worked. And I think it is both cool the way she interacted with the waitress, but also just like so fucking improbable. It just so, and I know that's kind of the waitress's deal, how she like randomly shows up on the Jersey Shore with Charlie or anything. But I do think that their interactions were very funny, especially when this could go on either side, but when the waitress first walks up and Dee's like, do you have a toiletry bag with you? Are you going to brush your teeth in the bog? And she's like, no, I was just going to shave my legs. I'm like, I don't know many chicks, but I'm pretty sure shaving your legs in cold bog water is like worse than not shaving your legs. Unfortunately, I think that's the main problem with the Dee storyline here, is it was all just a setup to get her to be the Banshee, which again, she does well. It's a little bit of a funny gag, but ultimately I think the waitress gets the best lines overall.
Yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit when we get to our dislikes, but this was a dislike with me in terms of how they use the waitress here. I even though while I didn't like it, it really worked. The interaction worked well, and it proved funny, and it carried throughout kind of this episode and the next episode. One more thing about Mac and Gus, in typical Sunny fashion, it just, the way they kind of let that storyline evolve over, you think they're going to be buds, and then you think they're both gay, and maybe they're going to have this fling and, maybe bang each other. And then you find out that, Mac's just the gay one and the other one's got a thing for a little kid. It was just basically a giant fuck you to the Catholic Church and the problems that they've had with their priests abusing, young boys. And I thought it was really well done, where they didn't have to come out and say that, but they did it through the comedy.
Oh, no, I'm gay. That's it. I'm a gay man. I'm a gay man who has trouble controlling his urges with other gay adult men. And that's the end of it.
God damn it.
And to me, that's art at its highest form, man. And I'm there for that shit, dude. Like, not to attack any one thing in particular, or any one problem, or any one thing that you want to make a point about, but the art behind being able to do it without saying it and making it funny, that's pretty fucking special, man. I got to give these dudes credit for that. That's a big, hairy, overlying issue that a lot of people don't want to talk about, and they figured out a way to give their stance on it and how wrong they think it is. I'm talking about the abuse, and they did it in a real funny way without having to come out and say, hey, screw you. And to me, it's difficult to do. And I give them a lot of credit for that, for being able to do that. It's not as easy as it seems.
Yeah, no, it was maybe a little bit on the nose when they go too far, when the dude starts talking about how you could pay off the family, a little money changes hands or whatever. I did kind of, the thing I didn't like was how they saw it coming. Like, I did see that coming, like a fair, I could just kind of, when he started talking about it, the urges and everything, I knew it wasn't going to be like he was also gay for some reason. And I thought it was actually kind of cool how they were kind of like, he showed him to be fairly inclusive and all that stuff. And I thought that was actually a good way to kind of set it up. And then the way they did undercut it with the pedophilia, I liked, like you said, as far as how they then confronted it, and you just see Mac do the thing that he does where he's like, oh, God damn it, where he knows like, all right, I can't.
He just figured it out.
I can't be a part of this. I can't be a part of this.
Yeah.
And he backs out. Like, again, showing that the gang are, generally very horrible people, but they do have some kind of lines. And that is shown, in the upcoming episode as well, too. So I think that is some decent writing.
Yeah, shown and highlighted, I'd say. Last thing for me, Mills, before we move on to dislikes, I thought that at first it was kind of like a weird thing where, Frank's talking about the turd in the soup. That was his big idea for getting even with Shelley Kelly, as Frank was feeling, let down and disappointed that Charlie was basically choosing Shelley Kelly over Frank. And so in a way to get even with him, he wanted to feed him turds in his soup. Dennis was far more diabolical in his plan. But I will say that this came back around towards, the end of this episode. And the moment when Charlie kind of figures out that Frank's being really overzealous about Shelly Kelly eating the meatballs in the soup, and Charlie makes Frank do it, and he had me up against the wall, and Frank goes forward with the dude. And it's such a gross moment because it looks like a meatball, but it also looks like it clearly could have been a turd. And it's this really gross moment where he puts it in typical Frank fashion. He's drooling and shit's all over his clothes, and he goes for it, and then he doesn't want to bite it. Charlie makes him bite it. He bites it. And it's this suspenseful, gross thing that I didn't want to see, but yet was hilarious, and I couldn't stop watching all at the same time. I just, it was a very for as childish and ridiculous as a moment it was, it worked, dude. Like, that's all I can say with the turd in the soup, dude. It worked.
I'll actually bring us, I'd like to comment on the castle plot line a little bit here, and then I'll move us into our dislikes. And I want to say that I love the bit when they came in and Frank and Charlie were both talking about Shelly Kelly's jacket, and he's like, I'm not wearing a jacket. Like, Frank started to take it. Charlie started to say it's like buttoned into his pants in the traditional Irish style. And Colmini's like, yeah, dude, not wearing a jacket at all.
Ah, welcome. Come in.
You're leaving us waiting out there
No, come on in. Welcome. Shirley, let me take your coat.
Frank, his name is Shelly, okay? You know this. And he couldn't take his coat if you tried, dude, because it's buttoned to his pants in traditional Irish style.
I'm not wearing a coat.
Right, he's not even wearing a coat, man.
I just thought that was funny, and it kind of showed like the weird connection that Frank and Charlie have. And then when he's in there, like, they give him the cheese, and Frank and Charlie looks at him, he's like, Frank's like, you made cheese together? I thought that was a pretty good line. And then, obviously when they're first at the dinner, and then Frank does the turd soup thing, and you hear Dennis muttering in the walls, and they're like, what's that? I thought that was great. And then when you see Dennis's eyes, obviously, like in the painting, and then when he bursts out of it, that all really works for me. And then, when, like you said, Frank's like, oh, I'm backed against the wall. What'd you expect to do? And Dennis is like, not eat a poopy. I thought that was a very funny delivery. Again, the running gag, like I said, of them not being able to name the waitress's name. And then finally at the end, when they're in the van and they see Dee as the Banshee, and that they use the Psycho theme, like that all works really well, I think.
Really, really, really does. Well done. Look, it was very good. Was it perfect? No, of course. We're going to nitpick a few things here. Let's start off with some of the dislikes. Mills, I'm going to talk about one that is a like, but also somewhat of a dislike. They really, really ramped up Dennis in this serial killer, murdering type role. I want to see, we know from the title of episode 8, somebody's dying. You almost want to see it be Dennis here, maybe. Or see where they go with it. To me, it felt like they're really piling it on here. And while it works and it's cool, it seemed like it was maybe a little too much here. And I worry that there's not going to be, the climax that everyone's hoping for when it comes to Dennis doing some sinister shit.
I kind of love you and I hate you, because you just made me think of, like, when I first saw the episode titles and everything, it seemed kind of obvious what was going to happen. What I think would have been much more interesting is if Dennis had just like killed somebody, like when he thought he like chopped Dee's head off, he chopped someone else's head off, and then the gang had to like go up the cliff and throw the body off to like save Dennis, and they all kind of accepted it or didn't or not. I think that might have actually been a way more interesting episode. So
yeah.
Bully for you, I guess. Like, I mean, like, I'm very interested in seeing that. I guess that fits towards my dislikes. We've covered a lot of my dislikes. One thing I will say is I didn't like the whole like Dennis is talking to the castle storyline. Like when it went past the COVID thing and he was still kind of like, that had no appeal to me whatsoever. And it would have been better if they would have at least made it obvious that maybe Dennis was doing that as like an excuse to like satisfy his urges.
Yeah, I will say, I miss regular Philadelphia Charlie, dude. Irish Charlie is not, he's doing a great job playing the role here of kind of like this confused innocence where it's like, I want to spend time with my dad, but I also feel bad, but I know that my dad won't get along with Frank and I got to pick. And it's just kind of this weird thing where you almost feel, where it's like a sad Charlie kind of to a certain degree. And, so I miss Charlie. Spoiler alert, regular Charlie does start to show back up next episode 8, which is awesome. I thought it's his best kind of episode of the season here, but I really missed, I think that's in an overall view of this season, I kind of missed Charlie a little bit here. I just think that he's not used as much because he's kind of on this discovery and the sad Charlie a little bit. So that was one dislike. And then the waitress, right? Like we talked about this, and look, she is Charlie Day's wife. Whenever the fuck she wants to show up, she's going to show up. That's fine. But her just showing up as Dee's in that bog just really pissed me off. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, come on, dude. Like I've been to Europe. Like you don't just bump into somebody twice in the same, like it just was bullshit. I wish they just could have had some reason for her, like something, like one more little storyline that would make sense for her to be there. But I will say, as ridiculous and as stupid and as pissed off as it made me to have her just randomly show up, and I was like, God damn it, that's definitely a dislike here. The usage of her was awesome. And I'm there for that. Like I like her character, and it's used really well and strategically. I thought that worked out so great, dude. Like when Dee finally slips under her, she's just slowly dripped in the bog, and the waitress is just getting hammered, torturing her. She finally goes under and can't breathe. The waitress goes to get her out. She gets stuck, and then Dee just goes over her and switches with her. It's just so funny, dude. And the waitress is like, "Oh, you dirty bitch!" Like just very, very good moment there. I thought it worked well. And again, your point of what's her name, and I found myself saying, what the hell is the waitress's name? I don't know it. So I would have been stuck in that bog too, just like Dee.
I completely agree with you on that aspect of it, that I very much enjoyed the waitress's appearance, but getting her there was just so contrived that it kind of takes you out of it a little bit, I would say. Again, I saw kind of the pedophilia joke coming a mile away with the Mac thing. Not a big deal. I would say that one thing that bothered me a little bit is that the whole idea that Dee went out to get peat moss to burn, it was a very specific idea, which leads me to believe, again, there were some deleted scenes or a missing episode or something kind of happened here, because she's out there and she's even talking about it, kind of like it just doesn't really quite make sense. And then the whole turd soup bit, it just went a little too far for me. Like the idea, like you pretty much know it's shit, and then you see Frank eating it, and it just, maybe that works for some people. It's just, it went probably just a bit too far for me. So Jamie G, that was kind of our likes and our dislikes. Before we move on to episode 8, the final episode of season 15 of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, how many Patty's bucks are you going to give to episode 7?
Dude, I'm giving episode 7 9 Patty's bucks. This was really good for me. I really enjoyed this. It was funny. It was fast paced. I like the energy with it. I like the direction, the character split offs. I mean, yeah, there's some dislikes in there. It's not a perfect episode, but to me, this was a really, really good episode. It's getting 9 Patty bucks for me as we got money in motion.
All right, that's very cool that you stimulate the economy. I think this is one of the first times we're going to diverge a little bit, and I think I'm going to give it a 7. And honestly, that's a little bit higher than I thought I was going to give. But when I really wrote down all my likes and my dislikes, I definitely had more likes than dislikes. But I think there's just some story stuff here that I can't overlook. And there's just not a ton of like flat out belly laughs or whatever. So I feel like, a 7 is pretty fair.
7 is, dude, I got by on C pluses. There's nothing wrong with that, man.
The D for diploma, dude. And again, like we always say, generally any episode of Sunny is better than almost anything else you could watch. So be grateful you get them.
100%.
Shape up or you don't get soup.
That's right. No soup for you. Mills, let's move on to the next episode, season 15, episode 8, The Gang Carries a Corpse Up the Mountain. This one originally aired on December 22nd, 2021. It was directed by Richie Keene. This was his 13th episode of Sunny that he's directed overall, and the second of season 15 after The Gang Buys a Roller Rink, which was an absolute winner. This was written by Megan Gans, guest starring Mary Elizabeth Ellis as the waitress. Plot summary in this one: the gang attempts to ascend a mountain in order for Charlie to fulfill an old and mysterious Irish burial tradition. But one by one, the gang backs out until Charlie is left to honor the dead body alone. Mills, walk us through some of the notable callbacks and appearances in episode 8, season 15.
Once again, as we've seen throughout the kind of the Ireland arc, we open with Stu. no one's getting it in the face or having to smell it this time. In this case, they're all eating it and basically agreeing like, not great, Bob. When they have to start carrying this said corpse up the mountain, when Dee leaves, they're all very sad because they agree that she was carrying way more than her load, because somehow scoliosis is now a superpower where her spine is now abnormally strong and she can carry more weight than she possibly could. Mac's Dutch heritage comes into play when he talks about building a windmill, but that's actually a reference back because they talk about blowing the body up the hill to when Charlie talked about blowing the Patty sign off of the bar back in the season 7 episode, The Antisocial Network. And in case you didn't know, Gorp is just another name for trail mix. It's just like dried fruit and nuts and shit that you eat when you're like biking, camping, or have literally nothing else to eat. And we find out that Mac is still Irish. The guys actually bribed Mrs. Mac to tell him that he was Dutch, and they said it took just a couple of Lucy's, and I couldn't quite figure out what that means, except my best guess is that it's like Charlie Brown, where Lucy charged 5 cents for thoughts, basically meaning, as they said, that Mrs. Mac hates Mac so much that she was willing to lie about his heritage for basically nothing. And of course, that means that Mac's dad is not really named Luther Vandross, which I'm a little bit sad about because it would be really cool if Mac's dad was actually named Luther Vandross. And once again, Mac's Irish thigh tattoo comes up. Good for him. And Frank ties the COVID vaccination thing back to Jeffrey Epstein, where Bill Gates was apparently on the island doing something with manatees. And we also get one last callback to that season 7 episode, The Antisocial Network, when the gang flips out on the waitress for shushing them.
You are screaming. Have you noticed that everyone else in here is speaking at a normal volume? Shut up! Shut up. Shut up.
Lot of funny callbacks and appearances. Mills, I will say, I'm pretty sure a Lucy is a loose cigarette. Which would make sense for Mrs.
That
Mac.
actually would. Good call.
I do say that. Man, this was the season finale, sadly. I guess we should raise a drink for that. We've already done with season 15 of Sunny. That sucks. Now let's go through some of our likes and dislikes. I'm a big fan of the little shit.
That's what she
and
said.
The fact that they kept the stew opening going, just again, basically all 8 episodes opened with the stew situation. I'm a big fan of that, dude. I thought that was absolutely great. Really enjoyed that opening. Again, this was more of a mellow one than what we saw in episode 7, where Dee throws it in the face. But I thought it was really cool how it came together with all of them actually eating it and actually commenting on, shit, this is actually pretty good stew. Really thought that was good. Big shout out for the Bros Before Hoes comment. It took me right back to like 1994. I thought I was in high school again, and that was a very common phrase back then. I mean, the 80s and the 90s were a different time, people. You said these crazy things, but, I'm glad we're progressing as a people. Now, I did think that was funny. That was a really good shout out. The cinematography and the scenery in this episode were absolutely stunning. And I was like, shit, I really kind of want to go countryside coast Ireland, dude. Like, holy shit. Like the scenery and the cinematography was beautiful. Thought it was really well done from a director and production standpoint in this one.
I will say that this easily has to be, some of the most gorgeous shots ever on the show. This, when they were on location, you could really tell. They obviously did some helicopter shots, some overhead stuff. It looked really good. I will say that then again, like when they did some in-studio stuff, you could kind of get, a little bit of contrast that wasn't great. But overall, I was there for it. I thought it brought me into it as much as you could with the idea that they were going with. And I do want to say that one of the just really early things, like, again, did love the Bros Before Hoes joint, but when Dennis is like, oh no, like I'm totally down with like the idea of you throwing the body off the cliff, I think it's awesome. but he's just worried about, his back and shit or whatever. I thought that was a pretty good Dennis joke. They start the joke early when they're bringing the body up the mountain, and they start dropping Charlie's dad's body. And Charlie says like, oh yeah, whatever, but like don't like drop it and consummate all over my dad. And then he kept kind of doing that joke about dropping his dad. I thought that was a nice kind of runner that worked really well. Again, like when he's like, can you not make dropping my dad a thing?
That it worked, and it worked all the way through, all the way up until the end there. To your point with Dennis with the Vitruvian spine, like I'm a big fan of the Vitruvian man. I think it's a great artistic display and something that I believe in. In fact, I actually have it on a necklace. But I thought it was very funny for his perfect Vitruvian spine. And just perfect Dennis. He was really on point and dialed in this season for sure. And in this episode, Mac, I thought really kind of killed in this, because as a Dutch man, he was so funny in his, as his battle with his identity crisis looms, and he's going over and over this shit, and only to find out he's Irish again. I thought he worked well here. The shamrock tattoo thing, while it didn't land for me kind of this episode and some of the episodes before, the way it ended was super funny moment for me, with Dennis basically screaming, "Don't you dare get another shamrock tattoo, you goddamn you, don't you." That was just a very, 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 very funny moment for me.
You've always been you! Fine, you know what? You take that liquid meat body bag and you get it up the goddamn hill by yourself, because I'm out.
Is he gonna get rid of the tattoo?
He's not gonna get rid of it. Are you getting rid of the tattoo?
Are you gonna get rid of the tattoo?
I'm gonna get another shamrock tattoo on the other leg.
Don't you dare!
Oh, I'm gonna do
dare
it.
get another shamrock tattoo, you son of a bitch!
You son of a bitch. Yeah, that was so funny, dude. So, as they just basically are like, trying to get him to, and that's a good point. Mac did get rid of all the arm tattoos. Why the hell does he keep the shamrock tattoo? So I thought those were good moments with Mac.
Oh yeah, I will co-sign on a couple of those moments here. And I will say that when they kind of get mad at the thought of like when Mac leaves, they're like, oh yeah, he was carrying a lot of weight. So they start getting mad because like one of Mac's identities would then be guy who's good at carrying things. And I just thought that was kind of a really just random funny thing but of course Mac would make one of his oh, I'm good at carrying stuff now. You know what I mean? Like, oh, he's kind of the sheriff of Patty's or whatever.
Ah, God damn it. All right. Nobody admit this to Mac, but I feel like he was carrying a ton of weight.
Yeah, that would be another one of his annoying identities. The man who could carry stuff.
When they get to when Dee leaves, I guess we didn't quite talk about that. But Dee leaves and she does shriek like a fucking banshee when like screaming about not being a banshee, when banshees aren't real, but she fucking screams it so bad. And the gang's like, well, we might have just thrown you off the cliff anyway. So they all talk to each other like, yeah, I was thinking about it. Like Mac was in on that when they're like,
crossed my mind.
Yeah, it crossed my mind. Like that they would have just also thrown, and then they all turn around and be like, what if she was a witch?
Banshees aren't real!
Is that what it was? Yes, that could be it. All right, you know what? Fine. Go. We don't even need you. We were probably going to throw you from the top anyway.
I thought about it.
I did too.
I was thinking about it too.
Yeah, well, you gotta play it safe, you never know.
You gotta be sure.
What if she's a witch?
What if she's a witch?
That was pretty good right there. And then the last thing with Matt kind of with putting the body down, he's apologized to Charlie. And he's like, I'm sorry. When I get frustrated, I just throw.
Yeah.
Just throwing the
because Charlie's like, can you just set him
down?
down? Sorry, when I get frustrated, I throw. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Mac was very good in this, dude. And speaking of the body, by far one of the funniest moments for me is when they finally get to the top and they're feeling really good. And they just, they did the tent thing to drag it up there. They're like, you know what? Let's regroup. Let's have a little gourd. Let's have some spritzers. And the body just slips down the hill, and it just bangs and hits and goes what seems to be miles down. I mean, it was so funny. Great moment. Mac's like, man, that's my bad. Very, very, very funny moment for me, watching that body and the way they did it. It looked very, very good, very painful. And they're like, yeah, that is going to be a mess inside that body bag. A lot of fluid. And then they want to go drain the fluid to lighten the load a little bit. So very funny moment for me.
Then it kind of hits a little bit of a lull for me, but I will say that, because the next thing I kind of like is, right before the next thing happens is that Charlie has a nice moment with Frank. where Frank kind of apologizes and says maybe he wishes he had actually really been Charlie's dad and everything. And, you know, it doesn't quite go as well from there because they have the thing, which is something I don't like with the piss fluid or the thermoses of piss and ever. That's not really my favorite thing. But, you know, because we're going to finish out our likes here, I will say that when they cut back to the pub, they have the waitress there. And now, like, somehow she escaped the bog, but she, like, gets a beer and goes and sits in the furnace before she even cleans her face. I like that, how when she turns around to shush the gang, like, she literally hasn't cleaned herself, but she most definitely did find a way to go in there, get herself a beer before she washed her face. So good for you, waitress. And I did enjoy the gang's basic, like, their America rants. Again, pretty funny and about what you expected from the gang. And I will say that one of the highlights of the episode definitely has to be obviously Charlie Day's performance when he's kind of like, you know, he does what he has to do to make the thing happen, because until then he'd been all about his dad. So he has to have this emotional moment where, you know, he kind of forgoes his dad to come back to the gang. It's his real family and everything. And it was very emotional.
You never picked me up from school. You didn't read me bedtime stories. You didn't carry me on your shoulders. You didn't bounce me over. You weren't there. And I needed you. I needed you there.
You know, I thought Charlie Day really sold it and did an excellent job there. And it was by far one of the more emotional scenes in the history of the show. So I love that. And then obviously, though, then after that, when the gang shows up with the pickup truck, they're like, hey, just throw the body in the back. And, you know, they bring it up the mountain and then they throw it off and it crashes on the rocks. And Charlie's like, oh, well, I guess they must have done it at low tide. I'm not sure how Charlie knows like what low tide is or whatever, but I thought it was really funny, especially when like, oh yeah, well there's some kids and Mac's like, oh yeah, they're gonna have a little Stand By Me situation going on now, so it'll be fine. And then they're all like go back to America and they literally play, you know, Born in the USA and everything. So
outstanding finish, and you're right, Charlie Day's scene was very showed his depth as an actor, but it was very, very cool to see that. And before that scene, I know the piss jugs really didn't work with Frank, where he, you know, one's piss, one's Gatorade, and he goes to give Charlie Day, he gives him the wrong one, it's piss, and he gives him the other one, and that one's also piss. But I thought Charlie losing it and dropping the F-bombs there was actually kind of a prelude, if you will, to Charlie's emotional scene. And I thought it was really funny. Charlie just kind of goes off on him like, God damn it, what the fuck, Frank? Like, you know, it just, you're not used to, you know, Charlie goes off on things, but you're not used to hearing him drop those F-bombs. I thought that was pretty cool.
That's piss too!
Oh, no.
What the fuck?
Oh, I must have got confused and pissed them both. Wait,
God
wait.
Damn
I
it,
got
dude.
a spritzer. How about a spritzer?
I don't want a fucking spritzer! God
Mac
damn it,
drank
Frank.
all the
Why do you have
spritzers.
canteens full of piss?
No.
Why is it always something crazy with you? God damn it! Look, I'm gonna do it alone. I don't need your help. Just go.
No, Charlie.
Just go. I don't need your help, Frank.
Charlie.
And then shout out to Killian's Irish Red, bro. Like Killian's Irish Red was the beer in the bar, in the pub at the end there, and the waitress is drinking it, and the gang's drinking it, and that was really, really cool. Something about Dee. She goes, the waitress shushes them, and then Dee goes, and it's like, oh, get this bitch, you know, Mac's like, get this bitch. And something about Dee screaming at her and then yelling, suck my big fat dick, is just really funny to me. So that worked big time. The America shit worked. Frank using, you know, again, they kind of kept bringing up, and that might be a dislike here that we'll get to in a minute bit, but just the COVID and the Epstein and all this shit, and they kind of already did it and they brought it back. But, you know, Frank bringing up all the bullshit, non-proven things to treat COVID, all the president stuff, right? All the shit Trump said with the LED lights up your ass and the freaking horse dewormer and all the shit, right? And you know, and he's bringing up all that stuff. He's, you know, the president stuff. I'm vaccinated, just not with the shot. You know, it was just again a brilliant piece of satire, and I'm glad they did something with it other than just bringing it up again.
The government shot? I didn't do that.
What? You're not vaccinated?
Oh yeah, I'm fully vaccinated. I got the non-shot kind.
What? No, there is no non-shot kind, Frank.
Of course there is. The hydro pills and the bleach and the horse dewormer, the president stuff. Wait,
Jesus! Why would you not take the shot?
Yeah, and that basically leads me right into the dislikes, because I had that in there like Frank, doing all the bullshit fucking treatments instead of taking the vaccine shot, because it seems like the gang would have known that earlier. And that kind of both works with Frank being distrusting of the government, but also works against Frank when like he was worried about getting ill when he went to the hospital and like got all of the possible treatments. So that's not quite consistent. And as I said before, I didn't really like the idea that he had piss in both canteens or whatever. That just didn't quite get there. One of my main dislikes here is it feels like we were missing either an entire act or more likely a whole episode, because we don't see Charlie's father die. We don't see the COVID thing happen. We never see Frank have COVID, and maybe they're even trying to like show that it could transmit without being symptomatic, but it's never really properly played in the show. It's just so sudden. You know what I mean? Like you think that Charlie Kelly, like the Banshee thing, and I don't know, it didn't really work for me on that. I get what they were trying to do and make COVID relevant there. It just seemed to happen way too much off screen. Like, how do we not get like a dying, like Charlie cared about his pop so much? And that's the other thing, is that he kind of just does, like, he's defending him. And then he has that moment. And then all of a sudden he's out. And like at the end, he's like, oh yeah, let the kids take my dad's body or whatever. It's fine. Like he seems to have swung around a little bit too far from me. And I also thought, like, same thing, the gag with the Kelly women being like, whatever, like they just beat it over the head. Like, yeah, like it, I don't know if it was not even an Irish stereotype. It just felt like too much to be like, we get it. Back in the day, they treated women poorly. You know, make it funnier. Just, you don't have to beat it over the head. We get it. Like,
it was way overdone to the point where it was like, like it did not work at all. Like one time would have been cool, or if they would have did something differently with it. And you're right. I mean, you know, we find out kind of a few minutes into the episode that that Shelley Kelly's dead, which was like, whoa. And then we don't find out how until, you know, the gang's kind of halfway up the mountain, probably another 5-10 minutes into the episode. And it's not really a satisfying death at all. They blame the Banshee thing, and you know, it didn't really work for me. And then it's the lungs fill up and they kind of figure out that it's COVID. Well, when the hell did that happen? Because they were just at dinner last night. You know, he had no signs, he wasn't sick, there was no precursor. So to me, it would have been better had they used Dennis, and we found out Dennis did something totally sinister here. And they just, I don't know, man. Again, that's the danger when you go all in on crazy Dennis and you don't, and then you have a death, you have the out right there to use it. And they didn't even create any mystery around how he died. Even mystery with like a weird glare in Dennis's eye would have been better than just this random Banshee /COVID thing. That didn't work for me at all with this.
holy shit. Like, again, I think you're right out here. Like, remember when Dennis said the thing about like, well, what did I do? Like, give him COVID with my COVID laser eyes or whatever? But he easily could have like kind of given her COVID and been like, see, Frank, I took care of the job for you or whatever. Like, just like you wanted, Dad. And like that would have tied back in.
Yep.
Yeah. See, I think that's kind of the, you know, one of the main drawbacks of the season. It does seem like there were other avenues they could have gone, especially, you know, either if they wanted to dig a little bit deeper or had another episode to explore.
Well, and that goes back to me with, you know, they decided to do kind of a storyline that stretched the entire season. And I can't think of another season in Sonny's history where they had kind of one thing carry through all seasons, right? And this one thing going to Ireland and this whole thing, usually it's every episode's new. It's a new story every episode, a new thing, a new adventure, a new, you know, not this one, right? This one kind of carried through. And I think the danger with that is you need more than 8 fucking episodes to do it. And it felt rushed. They just couldn't do it in 8 episodes. There was a lot of shit here that they were trying to do. And it just, I don't know, man. If you're going to do kind of a continuer throughout an entire season, I think you need more than 8 episodes.
Yeah, it definitely feels like there was just whether it was from a production standpoint with COVID, or there was a lost episode here, or just something that didn't work out in post, because there were way too many big events that happened off screen. You know, I mean, Charlie's dad, finally you bring him here and you're going to kill him off screen, but like show Calmini as corpse, like you paid him to show up. That, you know, there are just some decisions here that don't make a ton of sense for me from a kind of writing production standpoint. But on the other hand, you know, again, I think there was a lot more in this episode that I wound up liking than disliking. And again, you know, one of the best looking best sounding episodes in the history of the show. So you have to give it up for that.
Well, it's perfect segue into grading this bad boy. How many Patty's Bucks, Mills, do you got for this one, which was the season finale, episode 8 of season 15?
Again, like I have a lot of problems with the writing, but I think the acting and the location, everything was great. So I'll go up from my 7 from the previous episode up to a full 8 up here.
Giving it a full 8. She took the whole 8, as they say. I'm going an 8.5 on this one, Mills. And again, that's because I thought there were moments in this that really worked well. I thought the acting was outstanding, both individually and collaboratively. I love the ending. I loved certain moments of this that I thought worked outstandingly, and the cinematography and just the direction of this was outstanding with with the natural beauty of the coast of Ireland. So for me, 8.5. And I guess Mills, we should probably talk a little bit about our overall grade on the season. I'm going to rewatch this thing a couple times, but just after the first view, how do you rate this thing?
One of the probably better later seasons. I guess it really depends on how you feel about kind of this the Ireland arc, because it feels like 2 mini seasons, right? You have the first 4 before they go to the Ireland, and then the second 4. So it almost feels like 2 different units there. And there's probably more that I liked in that first 4 episode unit, especially we get in the origin story with the gang buys a roller rink and everything. But here, like, I think there was a lot of good character work going on, especially because it does seem that, Charlie, this was really his biological dad, and Mac really kind of reckoned with himself about what his identity is and everything. So I think there's some really good character work, and again, some very good cinematography work being done, especially some of those shots in the last episode.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, it's again, I'm going to watch it again. Is it up there with, season 11 or 5 or 7 or 3? Probably not. But to me, it's quick. It's only 8 episodes. I'm probably going to give this an overall grade of 8. Like I think it's definitely gets there. I mean, there's some really big highs. There's a couple of lows and some things that just don't add up. And again, there's some frustration around shit's missing here. A lot of big shit happening not on screen, to your point. So I think for me, probably an 8 is pretty fair as an overall season. I enjoyed it. I'm glad I'm glad we had it. I'm sad it's gone. Certainly looking forward to season 16.
Yeah, I would say I would probably come in right now at that 7.5, but it could be a grower, not a shower, if they choose to carry some of these storylines over to next season. Like I talked about, maybe having the IRS thing come back around. Some of these things about maybe Charlie having some guilt about his pops, or even the Frank Fluids thing coming back around could be interesting. So I might, I reserve the right to bump my grade up a little bit next year if they do really bring this stuff back around.
We're looking forward to it. Guess what, Mills? We will be here on A Night Pod Cometh. Mills, walk us through our upcoming schedule and what we plan to cover next here on the Joe Blow Football Show presents The Night Pod Cometh.
Yeah, we kind of been all over the place here, but I think we're going to try to do something where we might talk about like a way to kind of rank the seasons, where we break them down and we just kind of go through each season, talk about our favorite episodes, favorite moments, that kind of thing, and then try to figure out, what are our favorite seasons of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And if you're trying to get someone into the show, what's that entryway? What's that gateway drug? How do you get them into watching the show and our podcast and the show and our podcast? Mostly
spoiler
show,
alert, it will not be
our podcast.
It will not be the gang cracks the Liberty Bell. Do not use that as your introductory, Sonny, and you're trying to get somebody in. That is 100%.
All right. So in Jamie G, we talked about this season, and I kind of tease it. Like, what are you looking forward to next season? We know we're getting to season 16. What would you like to see from it?
Well, one thing I saw that they did this year is not that they're necessarily planning for the end, but they are starting to kind of focus on tying up some questions, right? Like we got to find out how the gang finally bought the bar. That's a big deal. That's been a question since day one. So, we found out Charlie's dad. Like there were some big things here, and I'm looking forward to seeing what other massive storylines and what other big questions that are unanswered kind of come to fruition here in season 16 as they continue to kind of work towards an end of what is just an epic fucking show. I think that would be really cool. And I like to see, again, more of this character development with stuff with Mac's identity, Dennis the serial killer, Charlie and Frank. And I thought Dee did an outstanding job in this season. I look forward to her continued, big energy that she has as we roll into season 16.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I would like to see them get more kind of integrated with some other things from the past. Like, for instance, this is the first time we didn't get any rickety cricket in the season, although David Hornsby did write a couple of episodes. I'd like to bring the McPoyles back. You know what I mean? I would like to bring, Pondy. We got no
Pondy's the coolest.
Like, yeah, I mean, Ben the Soldier, Rex, like all those dudes, like, fucking Z, Jerome, like, bring all the people back. I would love to do that to kind of bang it out. And I know a lot of that was probably, dictated a little bit by the way COVID just, has changed the industry and whatnot. But still, that's what I really want is I want to see the kind of the whole Sunny universe, like, kind of acknowledge that maybe they only have 16 episodes left over 2 seasons. But fuck, that's pretty good, especially because Danny DeVito's getting old and these guys are doing a lot of other stuff. You could watch the last season of AP Bio. It actually grew on me. Good show. Howerton, it's a little Dennisy, but good performance. And Mythic Quest, especially on Apple TV, maybe the best series on that platform. And, McElhenney's great running it. Charlie Day helps write it. Megan Gantz as well. Very good stuff. Watch that if you haven't, you're trying to kind of hold out till the next season of Sunny. Check out Mythic Quest. You'll like it a lot.
100%. Guys, thank you for watching, listening. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Joe Blow Football Show, the Night Pod Cometh. I am Jamie G. He is Magnum Mills. Mills, hit him with our social media, whatnot.
Easiest thing to do is just go to joeblowfootballshow.com. When you're there, if you could, please just like this video and subscribe so you don't miss any more of our free content. We're going to talk about a lot of other shows, do a lot of other things, but for all of our Always Sunny stuff on your favorite podcast platform, just search for Nightpod Cometh. We're on Twitter and Instagram at Nightpod Cometh. And you can find all of our show content at Joe Blow Show on Twitter and Instagram. And you can find all of our fantasy, dynasty, DFS wagering content at Season Gap FF on Twitter and Instagram. We occasionally live stream on Twitch at Joe Blow Football Show. You fucking jabronis, dude. It's been a crazy season. Have some stew. Go home. And check us out, though, because seriously, we're going to go back through, and I think we're going to break down our favorite seasons of Sunny, break them all down, come back, rate them, talk about them. Going to be a good time. Check it out. If you enjoy hanging out with the gang, you will enjoy this.
And always remember, brownouts happen when you're rum hammered. Until next time, this has been the Night Pod Cometh, fighter of the day pod. Oh, whoa, champion of the sun. Oh, whoa.
Also, rum and ham. Yeah.
That's a win.
I'm so fucking focused. Yeah.